It's really pretty diverse, yes. Yeah. Because also, for example, obviously, if you have small prey, you have small snakes most of the time. But for example, I have very, it's not a big one for people who have a rodent or something, but I have a species of Insectivorous snake. It's the bigger species that I have at home. It's a Cyclops major, and they're making the size of a corn snake, basically, sometimes bigger than that. And they eat earthworms, but the Canadian one, the big earthworms, and they come from Asia, and they are so much bigger than all the other species. It's crazy.
Welcome back to the Animals at Home podcast. My name is Dylan Perrin, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, I'm speaking with Charlotte, who is the human behind the Instagram account Insectivorous Snakes. Some of you may have followed that account. I've shared her page a couple of times on my stories. This is a topic that we have not covered before on the podcast at all, and that's discussing invert-eating snakes, which is a real fascinating side to herpetoculture, just fascinating side to snake ecology in general. Charlotte lives in France, which you'll be able to tell from her accent, and in the episode, we discuss everything from how she got into invert-eating snakes in the first place to how to care for them, some of the setups that she uses, the species that she cares for, how she actually keeps and raises some of the feeders, which is, crickets and snails, and a lot more. We also discussed a book that she's currently working on, which I'm hoping she continues to finish, which sounds like she will be, and potentially have that published in a year or so, which I think will be fascinating because, again, this is a very niche topic in herpetoculture and definitely need more information on this group of snakes. As with many Europeans, Latin names just roll off Charlotte's tongues without any issues, so there are probably some Latin names that you will not be familiar with in this episode because this is a group of animals that we just don't talk about very much. So instead of me attempting to butcher them myself, I will do my best to make sure that in the video version of this episode, so whether that's on Spotify or YouTube, that we actually have photos of the specific animals that Charlotte is talking about to make sure it's clear. Because if you've not heard these species before, you may just not recognize them when you hear them. So if you are confused at any point, if you're listening to just the audio version and you're wondering what specific species we're talking about, because as I said, Charlotte can easily say these words without having any issues, and you don't want to hear me pronouncing these words. Go to the YouTube video if you find yourself lost or trying to figure out what species we're talking about, because hopefully I'll have a photo of them there. And I think that is all I'm going to say before we jump into this one. Enjoy the episode. Cool. Well, Charlotte, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and nice to meet you because I never see you before. So thanks to be here.
Yeah, and it's nice to meet you as well. And you have a very unique Instagram page in the herpetoculture space, and I'm very much looking forward to kind of getting into this world of insectivorous snakes and some of the smaller species. Everybody who listens to the podcast knows that I have been on this tirade lately of kind of promoting smaller species, and I think that a lot of the animals that you work with fit in that. But we'll get into that a little bit. But why don't we just tell us a little bit about your history, kind of where you're from, and your history with keeping reptiles and animals.
Yeah, so I come from France. Maybe you can hear that with my accent. And I'm born in Paris, and now I live in the south of France in Bordeaux. And it's a very cool area for reptiles, if I can say that, because it's not too much warm or not too much cold. So it's very, very cool for reptiles. And I'm into the reptiles hobby since 12 years or something like that. And I started just close to directly with the insectivorous snakes. I started like everybody with a corn snake, and my second snake was snakes very common in the USA. It's Storeria decai. I think it's the brown snake. I think in America, and I'm very sorry because I will use only scientific name, and because in France we are really more used to them and not the common name. So I'm a little bit sorry.
No, that's totally fine.
I started with this species, and it's an amazing one in my opinion. I was really more into since now colubrids because I love the shape and the activity of them. The active mode and everything. The big eyes, the big head. It's very beautiful in my opinion. And but all these insectivorous snakes are very rare in Europe. And for example, the storia that you have in America, it's very, very rare in Europe. Really, really, it's very difficult to have them. But
Like they're
so
just
I
not
started with
not common there at all.
yeah, no, not common at all. Yes, and so I started with them, and after directly I thought, okay, I love them, and I love this type of snakes, so I want to know more about them. And when I wanted to learn more things about them, I discovered that in general about this type of snakes, it's very difficult to have information and everything, and that it's a kind of a niche and not a lot of documentation. So I was very, very more into them because of that, because I was curious and I wanted to discover more things. For the Storia, it was a little bit more easy because, as I can say, it's more common in America, so I can find some documentation. But you will see after with my other species, it's not the same. It's not the same. And if I can do that just in advance, I will say insectivorous snakes most of the time, but it's false. They are invertebrate eating snakes. So I'm sorry in advance. I'm saying insectivorous snakes to be more short, but but I think everybody can understand.
Yes, yeah, it makes sense. And it's funny to think that you would think that they would be more popular. Maybe we can kind of talk about why they might not be as popular, with whether it's sensitivity and whatnot in a little bit. But it just seems like we already have this hobby that's used to feeding off insects to lizards, so we already kind of have these established populations of feeder insects, and that's just part and parcel of keeping reptiles. And it's just so funny how foreign insectivorous snakes are to the hobby. It's just kind of strange.
Yeah, and that was my question about you. It is common to have this, for example, storia in captivity in America. No.
Uh, I don't. I mean, it's hard to say how common. I don't know actually how common they are
Yeah.
to keep. There are people. I do know some people who keep, but I would say not that common compared to the main staples in the
Okay.
hobby.
Okay. Cool. I see. Because you have we have a lot of species amazing for insectivorous snakes in America. I'm very jealous, if I can say that, because my second one was a Chionactis occipitalis, and it's also snakes. Mine come from Nevada, and it's like a sand snake, and it's an amazing one too. And you have also the Diadophis and the Ophiodris, so you are very lucky in America.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll make their way over to Europe at some point, and I mean, I guess you already have them, so maybe you will help go towards making them more popular, and because I know you're working on some breeding projects with them as well. But before we get too deep into that, because I obviously want to jump back to that, we were talking before we hit record that you're also working on a zookeeper license, and
Yeah.
I think that was sort of linked to a reel that you had posted on Instagram. Maybe was it in the summertime, just showing you interacting with primates and some lemurs. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I working to have my zookeeper license at the moment. Not because I want to change my job, because I really love my actual job. It's because I want to have my monkey license. And in France, for having the monkey license, it's a lot of work, but it's very difficult to obtain because obviously monkeys in France are not free. You can't have them like that. So I thought it was a cool addition to have my zookeeper license for my application. And also, I'm really, really into all the studies in general, blah blah blah. So I really like to learn something. So I thought it was also a good idea for my hobby in insectivorous snakes to know more things in general, and it's very interesting. So I hope I can have it before the end of the year. I started, I think, no, in September. So I hope in some months I can have it. And I'm very happy because I will make an internship in a zoo for 2 weeks in December. It'll be cool.
So how difficult was the process in general going through that course? Is it a pretty challenging course?
Yeah, it's online course, but also you have some homework to do, some appointment meeting with teacher to do. So yes, it's really really cool. Yeah, it's very cool and not easy. Yeah, that.
And then, so that video of the lemurs that you had posted, were those in a zoo environment that you were visiting, or?
Yeah, it's I posted many videos, and yes, one I think the one that you speak, it's in the zoo in France in Bordeaux. And it's a very cool zoo, and you can be as a visitor inside the enclosure of the lemur.
Oh wow. Okay, so that's
Yeah,
actually just what you can do if just a regular patron that comes to the zoo, they're allowed to have that
yeah,
experience.
yeah. If you come in France, you can go there, and you can be with the makikata and the other lemurs. Yes.
And so, sorry, was your goal eventually to be able to keep a primate at home? Like, I know that's what you're saying. That's why you want to get the zookeeper license. But eventually, is that actually, will you actually pull the trigger on something like that?
Yeah, because I would like to have one species particular of monkey, the slow loris. But also, when you ask to have an application for monkey, you need us. It's the same applications for the reptiles prohibited, if I can say that, because we have a part of our reptiles who are under license in France. For example, the weak one, the dangerous, the venomous, or the giant one. So I would like to have also more snakes and who are under license just because they are protected, if I can say that. For example, the Diadophis American one, it's under license in France. So, and it's not dangerous at all. But I would like to have them. So also, I thinking like, okay, I need to make my application for my snacks. So why not add monkeys inside? So yeah, like that. I don't want to lose time. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, what about a slow loris is attractive to you?
Yeah, because I'm very, very lucky to have people around me, and one person around me in particular that I'm very close to have an amazing, Lois, and I'm in love with them. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I've heard one other person talk about a slow loris besides just basically knowing what they are. But there's another podcast on this network, Project
yeah,
Herpetoculture, had somebody on. I'm not sure if you listened to that episode with Ben from Unseen Diversity, and he kind of got wrapped into some animal trafficking, kind of into the black market,
yeah,
which was not good. He ended up getting in trouble for it, and it was a happy ending to the story. But part of that story is him like stuffing a slow loris in his pants,
yeah,
in Asia to try to
yeah.
get it home.
Yeah, yes, Lois have something different. I was really not into monkeys at all before, but when I come from to his house, I discovered them, and it was yes a deal breaker for me. Yeah,
And so let's get back to the snakes, because you'd said the
yeah, yeah.
after your corn snake you picked up your first insectivorous snake. And can you say the species again? I know the common name was the worm, like worm snake or whatever we call it, but what was the Latin name?
You mean the first snake that I started, the Storeria?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's the brown snake, I think, in America. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
bronze snake. Okay, and so what about it immediately? Was there something that attracted to you about just the we'll call it like the general class of insectivorous snakes, or was
Uh,
it something about it?
So insectivorous snake, you have in the insectivorous snakes hobby, you have a lot of different colors. So it's not one color especially who attracted me. I was more in the in relation in this shop in Paris. We have a very famous shop for reptiles in Paris, and they had this species, and I was in love of the first sight when I see them. So I started with that, and after some researches, when they had another species, I started with them too, the Chionactis. It's a banded snake, I think, in maybe something like that. Shovel banded snake in America. And so I took them, and after it was like over, the other snakes didn't interest in me, the more normal one, like if I can say that, because yes, the first things I was just very, very curious about these snakes, very uncommon. And when I don't see any documentation, I want to know more. So like that, I started to work it with them. And also, after I had, I think, my parias, and after my Apopeltura boa, Cyclops major, and Scolecophis and Erenis. So it was kind of over. I was just more in love of them, and since now I working with them also to finish my book, because I'm writing at the moment a book about insectivorous snakes. So if I work with them, it's also to finish my book. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. And as far as I know, it sounds like the couple of species that you started with were maybe more general insectivores, as far as what they could eat, whether it's crickets or spiders or whatever. And then I know a few of the species that you had just mentioned. What's the genus for the boas? That's like the slug eating boas.
Yeah, it's Apopeltura boa.
Apopeltura, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So I mean, there's a few of those that become more specialized, right? So did you start with more generalist and then work your way towards things that are like specifically eating snails or slugs or even centipedes?
Yeah, it was still the beginning, various diets, because the Staria eating earthworms, the Cynactis eating cricket, and after the Pareas eating snails, and I had also another species of Storeria who eat only slugs, so it's even more complicated. And after Apopeltura, who eat the snails too. But I think the most difficult diet one is the Scolecophis, because they eat Scolopender. So it's really, really more complicated to feed them.
So is that just like millipedes and centipedes?
Yes, you can feed them with that, but they come from Nicaragua. So in Nicaragua, they eaten the big Scolopender, the not funny one, if I can say that. So yeah, it's not really easy, because they are more into those animals than the European millipeds of ours. So yes, at the beginning it was not easy, but it's a cool challenge, but an expensive challenge, if I can say that. A very expensive one, because buying Scolopender and millipede like that, it's if you have a group of Scolecophis like I have 4. It's like 100 euros each month. Yeah.
And because you're buying them as feeders, you can't. Have you tried starting a feeder colony for?
No, because I love most of all the animals, but Scolopenders, it's not possible. I don't want to breed them. It's I'm okay to stock them, for feeding, but I prefer to order them every month, because it's just more easy. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about what do you think makes this group of snakes good in captivity? Obviously, there are some things like they're smaller and maybe even feeding insects could be a benefit for some people. But are there other things that just jump out that you really enjoy about keeping snake, like invert-eating snakes?
Yeah, I think it's very cool to have them in captivity, because they are not just so different. And if you are borrowing with one, for example, diet of snakes, you can have plenty of others, and also they eat really more frequently than the rodent eater. So if you want to work more with them, because basically, if you have a normal snake, I'm sorry to say normal, but you know what I mean. So rodent eater, you feed them like every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, every month. So at the end, you don't share the same, like, and for me, with my snakes, I feed them every 2 days, 3 days. So it's more work. Yeah, totally. It's really a lot of more work, but at the end, I have the feeling to share more things with them.
Yes. Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you listen to people who pretty much exclusively keep lizards, that's kind of that's sort of the feedback they give, is that they
Yeah,
love to keep lizards because they get that, like, several time a week interaction with the animal, where they get to watch it hunt, or just interact with it in a way. And that's when we talk about rodent eaters, or vertebrate eaters eating
yes,
snakes. That's often what happens too, is either you don't get to interact with them as often because you're feeding them on an appropriate schedule, or people tend to overfeed them because they want to perpetually interact with them, and then you have a
yeah.
snake that's obese. So invert eating snakes is almost the best of both worlds, where you get to feed them often and you're not going to make them overweight.
Yeah. And that's the cool part. Also, it's sometimes really less easy because yes, you need to be more here just to take care of them. Also, they are really sensitive. It's not complicated snakes in general, but they are really more sensitive. I'm very lucky, for example, in my room at the moment because I have the room. I don't know if you see well, but it's stone on my wall, so it's keep my room very fresh because I have some species so different. Some of them come from the desert of Nevada, and some of other come from the forest of Vietnam or China. So, for example, the snails eater. I don't want to speak about all of them, but most of them come from Asia. Because you have also some. I have a species come from South America, very cool too, the Sibon. But yeah, they like fresh temperatures. For example, I keep them at 22 degrees maximum. So so if you have a room more too much hot, for example, in the summer time, you can lose all of them. So yes, they are really really more sensitive than other species, and but it's also what are the things that I like with them. And yes, for example, also those snails eater species, they eat very often too. But for example, they are really sensitive about the ventilation, in general. So I need to have some fans, computer fans on the top of the terrarium to ventilate the terrarium because they love to have a lot of humidity, but also a good ventilation. Because if it's not the case, you can lose them.
Yeah, and that's often the challenge with these like tropical species, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to make a high humid environment, but it's actually difficult to make a high humidity environment while having fresh air. So I can imagine that. So would you say those are like the two main parameters as far as what's causing them, causes them to be quite sensitive, is the temperature and just not having a fresh air supply?
Yeah, I think it's that, and also a good lighting. For me, it's something. It's like the key to have a good lighting, and not only the temperature and the lighting. If you have those both parameters, I think it's gonna be well. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people who don't give them, the UVs that they need because obviously when you have rodent eater, some of people don't give UVs because they don't really need. So it's a debate, if I can say that. Nobody is on the same opinion, but so most of the reptile skipper don't of the basic, snake skipper don't give UVs to their snakes. And but with the Insectivorous one, you need like it's like lizards basically. So you need to give to them UVA, UVB, and if you don't give them the good lighting, I think they're gonna die. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, like you said, if you're dealing with a snake that's eating vertebrate prey, birds and rodents, they are going to be getting usually a good adequate. No, I shouldn't say adequate, but they are getting a source of vitamin D through the organs that they're ingesting, and they can get by without UV. Obviously, we do recommend that people do add UV, but you can get by without it. Whereas in insectivore snake, if they're not getting it through the lighting, they're probably not getting it at all.
Yeah.
Or do you dust the prey at all?
What do you mean by
Oh,
dust?
dust, like add supplements, like how some people when they feed their lizards they'll
Yes,
sprinkle.
yes.
Yeah.
That depend of the prey. For snails and slugs and earthworms, I don't add calcium. But for crickets and small spiders and stuff like that, yes, I put some calcium. Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask about the feeding experience, but quickly, just as you mentioned, the small spiders, is that maybe you could just quickly run through some of the prey items that you have at your home, kind of as a staple, like what you cycle through. Like I know we can hear some crickets in the background,
Yeah.
so I assume you have those running, but and some snails. I know you have a breeding bin of snails,
Yeah.
but are there some other things that you have in your? Like I'm very curious about the small spiders. Are those things that you just find outside, or do you have like a setup to?
No, for the spider, I have a lot of food for snacks at home, so it's enough for me. So for the spiders, I just buy some sometimes to breeders, but at home I have, yes, crickets, snails, slugs, and earthworms. Yeah. For the cricket, I don't really like the noise, so I don't breed them by myself.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fair. That's why I don't have crickets here either. I'm not a huge fan of the noise.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the experience of feeding them, because I imagine that's quite a different experience than tongue feeding a rat to a regular snake, as we've been calling them. I imagine there's a more of like a hunting element to this experience.
Yeah, they are also all different, really. For example, the connectees, the one who eating crickets, the sand snake from America, they live under the sand, and they feel when a cricket is on the sand, and they jump from the sand, like, did you see the movie Dune with the giant worms?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something like that. They come from the sand and took the crickets and go back in the sand. Yeah. So for this species particularly, it's very cool. Also, for the snails eater, it's something very, very funny, because when you have a slow prey, you have slow snakes too. They are really, really not speed at all. They are just very, very slow, and they look like, slow loris kind of. They are so slow and move so slow, and in one moment they just take the snails, but they eat very. For example, for a snail eater, it's a long process for them to eat, because they took the snail and they remove it from the shell. So a long fight between the snails and the snake, because the snail go back inside deep and the snakes pull it, so it's very long.
So do they not ingest the shell at all?
No,
Oh, they don't. Okay, wow. I thought that they would definitely ingest the shell. You'd
but
think that would be some, like, keratin or something.
if you are interested, I can send you some videos of mine, and it's very, very funny, and but very long, yes. And for the earthworms, for example, they just swallow the worms like a spaghetti. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I know there's obviously, as you're mentioning, there's species that are specializing towards snails, and then are there some species that specialize towards slugs? Like I know you hear the common name all the time, slug eaters, but are those like are snail eaters also slug eaters? Are there actual specific species that won't eat snails but will eat slugs?
Yeah, yeah. For example, my Parias and Apopeltura boa will not accept slugs. Yeah, and it's one of the big difficulty with all these species of insectivorous snakes. It's to find the good prey, because, for example, I can feed some of my snakes of the snail eater with the common snails that you find in Europe, but some of them accept acatina, the big giant snails from Africa. I I buy a lot of babies, and I feed them with that. But some of them don't accept at all those species. So it's very difficult to find the good one. Each time it's complicated.
Yeah. And when you do feed, are you just feeding one snail at a time, or like you say, you feed them every couple of days? Is each feeding just a single snail?
Uh, my snakes, for most of them, live in group. So because it's the same with the rodent keeper. Some of them, remove the snakes from the terrarium and feed them separately. You you can't really do that with insectivorous snakes because they are really stressed in general. So if you want to remove them from the terrarium each time for feeding them, they will never eat, basically. Yeah. So I put just a lot of snails, for example, in the terrarium, and they do their life.
Gotcha. So the numbers dwindle over the next couple of days.
Yeah. But for example, an average of snails eat each week for one snake. It's for an adult. It's like 4 snails each week. Yeah, sometimes more, sometimes less. Yeah.
Are there any sort of large mistakes that you've made over the years? 'Cause I think you've been keeping them for quite a while now. Is there anything that's like you're talking about writing a book?
Yeah.
Do you have anything in that book that you'd be writing as far as avoid these errors?
Yeah, because obviously I made some mistakes, and when you do mistakes in this hobby, you it's a very hard mistake for the animals because most of the time they died. So it's something that people forget most of the time. We don't work with objects, we work with animals. And also, uh, I think you can imagine, but with rare snakes like that, most of my snakes come from imports. So they are really more sensitive. I breed all of my species, but yeah, it is what it is. It's import snakes. So they are just different and more weak than the captive bred one. You can have a debate about import or no, but and I feel I totally agree with the fact that it's not amazing to have import animals. So yeah, I'm totally aware about that. So, but yes, it is what it is. So when you work with some animals like that, you can make a lot of mistake, and sometimes you don't know what happens. It's like that. One day you discover a snake died, and after years you understand why. But so yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. Not a lot, but yeah, I made some. For example, at the beginning, I didn't know about these ventilation things, for the fan and air and stuff, because uh, the things that I'm saying to you today look like very simple and basic, but when I started, there is no documentation at all about them. So the things that I can say today to you, it's just the things that I learned on the field, and so yeah. Right now, I think I I always did my best, but at the moment, I think I'm pretty more confident about how I keep them, how I breed them, and the most difficult part, for example, of the breeding, it's not the breeding himself. It's to feed the babies when they're born. I didn't because I didn't. I don't know if you've seen my pics of the small snakes in my hand. Can you imagine to feed that? And the small snakes like that, the babies, the newborn one, all of them eat every day. Yeah, so it's a lot of work, really a lot of work. It's one day I had like 40 babies in the same time. It was 2 hours of work every day just to feed everybody, put some water in every bowl and everything. So yeah, it's and after that, in a normal snakes with rodent, you can give them away at the age of 2 months, something like that, 3 months. But but it's something really different with the insectivorous snake. Me, I keep them the first year at home because before the first year, I'm not sure yet if they will survive because they are really, really sensitive.
So when you're starting the babies, and by the way, is it a mix of some egg laying and some live birth, or are they mostly eggs?
Oh, it's most of the time only egg, only the store area. The store area making full baby born directly. Yeah.
Okay. And so when you're starting out the babies, do they is because this can happen with rodent eaters is you just have to really take time for them to almost learn how to eat like a frozen thawed prey item, for example. But what is the experience like? You're saying it takes like 2 hours to feed 40 babies. Do they have no idea what the prey is at first? Are you trying to introduce it to them by bringing it close to their mouth, or is it just a
No.
matter of having to put little snails in every enclosure? Just takes forever.
No, yeah, I don't try to show to them the prey on something. I just put the prey in the boxes, I close it, and I go after because they are so weak, so you can't, assist feeding them. For example, you can break all the head in just one movement, so it's really too dangerous.
Yeah, you could crush their head easily.
Yeah, me, and also it's not my politic at home. I see the things differently. If they don't want to eat, it's just like that. So if you don't want to eat, I think if they not eat, it's for a reason and because they are too much weak or something. So I don't push them out to eat. It's just like that.
You just sort of
I
let
don't
natural
force
selection
anything.
take its place.
Yeah, and also it's in the with Insectivorous snakes. I know that I can lost half of the hatchling. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, man, that must be a crazy amount of work, especially because you got to commit to it for a year. What are some of the clutch sizes that you deal with?
It's some they can be so different. For the store area, they can make, for example, 25 babies in one time. But for the other species, it's more like 4 eggs, just 4 eggs and 5. So if you lose half of them, you don't have a lot of babies. So it's even more. You are even more disappointed when it's a very rare species and you have only 4 eggs and maybe 2 will just survive at the end. After all this work of years and years, sometimes you have 2 babies, but it's it's just life.
Yeah. That's. I mean, you have to be committed for that for sure. And there's this temptation, at least that I'm having, to group all of these invert-eating snakes together, even though they really aren't related. And they're across the entire world. You have snakes from China to South America to North America, but for whatever reason, in my mind, just grouping them into invert eaters. Do they occupy a similar ecological niche or ecological range in the various places that they live, or is it pretty diverse?
It's really pretty diverse, yes. Yeah. Because also, for example, obviously, if you have small prey, you have small snakes most of the time. But for example, I have very, it's not a big one for people who have a rodent or something, but I have a species of Insectivorous snake. It's the bigger species that I have at home. It's a Cyclops major, and they're making the size of a corn snake, basically, sometimes bigger than that. And they eat earthworms, but the Canadian one, the big earthworms, and they come from Asia, and they are so much bigger than all the other species. It's crazy. Yeah, and they eat. They are more predators than the others, who are more, prey, the prey, because all the small snakes are just a lot of prey for every other animals.
Yes, yeah. So most of them are going to be more shy and timid, and probably more likely to
Yes.
hide. Where once in a while, like the species of
Yeah.
that are more aggressive when it comes to eating, you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And so, can you tell us a little bit about how you set them up? I know, again, we're kind of painting everything with a broad brush as far as invert eating snakes, but what do your setups generally look like?
I work only with, for example, most. I not only, but for most of my terrarium, if I want to say it's like 90% of my terrarium, I have terrarium look like Exoterra, because I love the top ventilation, but it's a struggle that a lot of reptile keepers don't know, but even my adult snakes can escape for the cable management of the Exoterra. So I need to silicone every hole like that. Yeah, yeah, and it's the bigger problem with insectivorous snakes. It's the escape. Yeah, yeah, and I think it's, if I can speak about a big mistake, it's the escape. Each time it's the escape. Each time. I don't want to say each time, but most of the time, the mistake that you can do, it's the escape one.
Yeah, so you got to imagine that they're going to sneak out of things smaller than you can even.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just terrible, and when they are babies, it's even more crazy. For example, my babies, I put them in the cricket box. You know, the plastic cricket box. You know that when you buy them in the shop, but I put them because they are more tiny than the size of the box. So it's like to keep, I don't know, a giant python in a terrarium longer than him. For them, it's like a terrarium, yes.
And it's just a tiny little bin. That is amazing.
And for the bowl of water, I use, the top of the bottle, the plastic bottle. I don't know to say that in English, but yes.
Yeah, just like the lid off of, like the cap off a water bottle.
Yeah, imagine the size of these little things. For them, it's like a swimming pool. Yeah.
Oh my God, that must be stressful working with them when they first hatch.
Yeah.
So what are some of the, you had mentioned the one species from China. I forget, the species name was Major. I forget what the genus species was. You said that was a little bit of a larger, kind of more corn snake size, but what are the other kind of the larger, like on the larger end, when they get to their full grown size, what kind of lengths are you looking at?
I'm not sure to understand well your question. Your question is about, the different size of the different
Yeah.
species?
But besides the ones major species that you did say gets quite large, as far as the other species that you have go, how long do they get?
Yeah, the Cyclophus major making, for example, 1 meter 30, and my most tiny one, adult, making 19 centimeters. Yeah, pretty small. Yeah.
And are there species that you keep right now that you think that would make the best for somebody who's wanting to get into invert keeping? Like, I'm sure there's different sensitivity levels and different difficulties when it comes to feeding. Do you have a list of a couple that you think are great starter snakes for this?
Yeah, I think the Storeria are very good. Your American species, it's a cool one to start because you don't have this struggle about the temperature, the ventilation, blah blah blah. You can keep them like basic, the hot point at 29. They are really basic in temperatures and everything. They just eat earthworms, and it's a prey very easy to find in fish, shop. What do you call that? Yes, the shop when to have all the stuff to fish. Yeah.
Like a fish stop or a fish shop, an aquarium.
Yeah, so it's very easy to buy that. So I think the species is very easy to start, and also the Erenis. It's a species come from Balkan, and they love hot temperatures. So it's cool, and they eat cricket. It's very easy to find, and they are very cool, and they're making like 45 centimeters adult, and they are pretty beautiful. Yeah.
Hey there, I want to take a quick break to thank this week's sponsors. First, we have Exotics Keeper Magazine, which is a herpetoculture-based magazine out of the UK. Many of you are probably already familiar with them as we had their editor, Thomas Marriott, on a few weeks ago. And it is really a quintessential hobbyist magazine. When you flip through the pages of the monthly magazine, it really does, for me, brings me back to being a kid. I think many of us would have experienced reptiles and amphibians for the first time in either magazine or books, and this just brings me back to those moments. Exotics Keeper Magazine provides news, news, stories, and information surrounding the care and welfare of exotic animals. And you'll actually recognize quite a few of the authors that write the articles within each issue. Both Roy from Project Herpetoculture and Liam and Ellie from Reptiles and Research have actually contributed to the magazine in the past. I know Roy has an article about Spilotes coming up in a couple of months, or it might already be out by the time you're hearing this, so I'm very much looking forward to that. If you are living in the UK, for only a couple of bucks a month, you can receive the hard copy of the magazine, which I'm incredibly jealous of because there's something about reading a hard copy that is just so exciting. But for everybody else in the world, or for those in the UK, the digital copy of this magazine is free. All you have to do is go to their website, put in your email, and every month the issue will be delivered directly to your inbox, and you can flip through the magazine for free, which I've really enjoyed. But I hope that more of us can sign up for the digital copy and show EK that we want, that there's enough interest to actually start having the physical copy go out to the rest of the world. So that's my goal with this ad. So very much go check them out. It's an incredible magazine. It really does bring me back to being a child, and I'm sure it will with you as well. And the other way you can help support this podcast is by checking out the other sponsor, CustomReptileHabitats.com. That is the incredible enclosures behind me. They were sponsored by Custom Reptile Habitats. If you're looking for more information on them, you can head to the affiliate link in either the show notes or the YouTube description. If you click that link and you end up making a purchase, a commission comes back to me at no extra cost to you. And of course, that is a way you can help support this podcast. Back to the episode. And then during the day, you had mentioned providing UV and whatnot. Obviously, there's probably some basking behavior, so maybe some like cryptic basking behavior. Maybe you don't necessarily see them basking in the open, but are these in general fairly reclusive and hidden most of the day, or do you actually see them out and about active?
No, they are active. Yeah, they are active. They are shy, maybe if you move too fast, okay? But they are very, very active in general. You can see them a lot. Also, for example, all the snails eater, mostly the Aplopeltura boa, you can see them very easily. They are just in front of the terrarium very easily. Yeah, never hide.
The Aplopeltura boa, they just look so strange. I mean, their eyes are so huge. Their face is like almost like smushed in, like they have a very round skull.
They are my favorite. Yes, I love them, and yeah, they are very strange. But also, if you want to have a snake that you can see, yeah, I think it's the perfect one. Yeah, maybe very not easy to keep for a long time, but if you want to watch your animals, it's very cool to have them.
Now, what about lifespans? Is that something that you can even comment on? I'm not, you haven't kept them. You kept them for maybe a decade. I'm not sure how many actual individuals you've kept for that long, but I assume that these animals probably don't live quite as long as some of the longer metabolisms, or snakes with longer metabolisms that are eating like a couple times a year. But maybe you have an answer to that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's easy to know because I read some documentation about the time of the age maximum in the wild, but everybody knows that it's different in captivity. I didn't read something very interesting about this in captivity. For the moment, I have a snake that I have since 10 years at home, and still in good condition, still making babies. So I hope he will live a long time more. But yeah, I really think because they have a speed metabolism, they will not live long as the other rodent species. I really think the reading that I had in my hands, speaking more about 15 years old, and for some of them even 10 years old.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of what my mind was sort of reaching to as far as a number, probably somewhere between 10 and 20. But like you said, you never know until we keep them in captivity long enough. I don't know if you ever mentioned how many. You've rattled off some of the species that you keep, but how many actual individuals do you think you have? Maybe don't include babies if you're working with babies right now, but as far as how many snakes you have, what would that number be?
At the moment, I don't know. I can count, but I don't know. But all the species that I spoke to you, I have them. And yes, I think I have like 17, 20. But this number seems to be so huge, but it's important that people understand that they are very tiny snakes. So if I give a 60 centimeters terrarium for a snake of 30 centimeters, it's like when you give to a python of 8 meters a terrarium of 16 meters. So it's just really much bigger, and so they don't take a lot of space at my place. It's very easy to keep them because of that too. And also they live in group, so the number seems to be very huge, but they live in group of 4, 5 sometimes. So obviously, when you have a group of 4 animals, it's the number of adults growing up very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've summarized exactly what I always say about keeping smaller species, is that it's so much easier to provide much larger spaces for them. And on your Instagram, you, in the last maybe month or so, you did like a kind of like a little, not really like a room tour, but like just a real kind of flashing through your snake room. Is that all the enclosures you have? Like, are all the snakes in those? Like, it only looked like maybe like 4 or 5.
Yeah, everything is yes. And the big terrarium that you can see in this reel, it's my Varanus terrarium. Yeah.
And that's that real tall one?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a Varanus resingeri, an old boy of 15 years old. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, it really doesn't take up a ton of space in your home, and like you said, you're providing large spaces for them, even, but they're so small that it doesn't eat up your entire room.
Yeah. And also I have another snake, not Insectivorous, because I am a big fan of them. I have this species since long time now. I'm a big fan of Colubur constrictor. It's the racer snake come from America, the black racer, I think. So I really love them. It's not insectivorous snakes, but it's my guilty pleasure, if I can say that. My only snakes who don't eat insect or invertebrate is this species because I'm in love with them.
That is a great species.
Yeah.
Fast and very quick, and one of those species that you think, oh yeah, there's lots going on behind the eyes here.
Yeah. And with the temper and everything, I love them. And everything is in my room at the moment, and I'm really happy about that because I think it's kind of little bit the same at your place. I have to have my office with my terrarium in the back, and everything under control in one room, because I don't want to put them in every room of my apartment. I love to keep the things very, in I don't know how to say that in English, but when you want everything in the good order and put everything well,
you want it to be in a controlled environment, right? So
I'm a little bit maniac of of the cleaning and everything. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm like that too. I like to have it all in one spot. It's just easier to do maintenance and everything. And I know another thing that I had learned on your Instagram just briefly was, and I think it sounded like you're going to write more about this in the book, was about raising snail colonies. And you'd mentioned a little bit throughout the conversation today, but maybe can you walk through how to do that successfully, as far as having a supply of breeding snails? You had mentioned the species. Well, you had mentioned that sometimes the snakes won't take certain species. But what species do you breed at home as far as the snails go?
I breed the helix, and it's the European one, and the really more common one that you can find, in your garden and blah blah blah. But I don't want to take snails from my garden because I'm very aware about all the pesticide, all the toxic things that you can find outside, and mostly for snails, they can keep them into them a lot of toxic things. And because if they go on your lettuce, and if you put something not good on the lettuce, maybe the snails will survive, but after, when you give that to your snake, it's not good at the end. So I prefer to breed them at home. I have my small one in my animal room, but also I have a big outside, like a greenhouse of 4 square meters outside, only for snails. Yeah.
So what does that look like? Is that like, are they just free roaming in a space outside, or do you have like containers of them in different sizes? Or
No, everybody is in the greenhouse, and I put some wooden plank, uh, not on the floor directly, but kind of, yeah, I don't know how to say that in English, but yeah, they are not on the floor, but they are a little bit in the air. Like that, the snails can go under and be glue, under the plank. And it's better for them to stay like that, for example, for the winter, because if they are in the ground, they can have a lot of animals and other insects who can eat them. So it's really more easy to keep the snails like that. And yes, they are very easy to keep, but inside it's more complicated, because you can have a lot of problem, because if you put too much snails inside the same setup, you can have some disease, and they can die easily.
so you have to keep their numbers at a sort of a stable level then.
Yeah, I for example, I take 100 snails from my greenhouse, put them inside, but and I'm making walk to go to the greenhouse to take 100 each time when I don't have enough. Yeah.
And then as far as feeding them, I imagine outside they kind of are on their own, but when you're inside, are you putting something in the bin to make sure that they're eating, or do they not really need to because you're going to be feeding them off right away?
I feed them always, because it's like it's just like that. It's better to feed the animals. If the animals are in good condition, your snake will be in good condition. It's also the keys. I prepare a special mix with some things for the snails, for the crickets, and everything. For like that, they can eat very properly, and it's better for my snakes at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any species that are kind of on your list of things that you eventually want to pick up or have imported to start working with?
If I have a dream, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I have. I would like to have deep sass. At the moment, they come from South America, and yeah, I would like to have them, but they are under license, so that's why also I'm working on my license.
Right.
And your American species, the Diadophis punctatus, it's a snake who have a red belly. I don't know if you see the species, but they are so fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
And yes, so they are under license. It's kind of my dream, but if I can add those both species, it will be cool. And also, I would like to have one viper come from the south of France. It's a very tiny viper, and it's like 30 centimeters adult. And this tiny viper only eats crickets.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. What species is that?
Vipera ursini.
Okay. Wow, that's
And
really cool.
Yeah, and they are not very dangerous for people. If they bite you, it's like when a bee
Sting you. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not very dangerous, even if it's in the Vipera family genus. But yeah, but they are under license in France, so yeah, I want them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so that would be like, if you got your license, that would be another species that you'd be allowed to keep.
Not under license, you mean? Yes, there is some, but they are just so impossible to find at the moment. Not impossible, but you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
They come from Asia, some subspecies of Cyclopeops, for example, or yes, or it's more, some other species of Parias, not the basic one, but yeah, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, oops, I just hit my mic. It's a very fascinating group of animals to work with. Like I said, it's kind of somewhat surprising that they're not more popular, considering that some of them are, as you had talked about, relatively easy to care for as far as snakes go. It's not going to be super extreme. And then as far as the sensitive ones go, it's, I think many more advanced keepers are used to working with species that have some sensitivities with them. So it's not like they're totally out of the question. So it seems like they should be more popular than they are. When you breed them, are you selling them to people who like what type of person buys them
Yeah.
from you? Are they kind of in our group as far as someone that's more advanced? I shouldn't say advanced, but someone who's kind of deep into the world of herpeticulture, or are they just like random people that want to start keeping snakes and decide to start with that?
I'm very I'm not easy, I think, now when I give my snacks. It was not the case in the past. You spoke about mistakes, and my biggest mistakes is I one day I sold my babies because it's like that, just like that. But my adult died 2 months after. Not just the mother. And after that, if you didn't keep any babies, you are just stuck again. Yeah. So I felt very ashamed about that, and so now I keep my babies very long. I don't run after money. Also, I don't want to sell my snacks. Uh, I want to give them to people very, serious. Yes. And for example, maybe I will shock some people if I say that, but the scolecophis, the species with scolopender, really it's one of the most amazing, beautiful species. They are red and black, and they look like a false cobra, something like that, and they are very beautiful. And I can tell you a short story. In the 2016, I think, there is a lot of import of this species. So a lot of people bought them, really a lot, because they was not very expensive and very easy to find at this year. And most all of them died because they are so complicated to keep in captivity, because so difficult to feed, just so difficult to feed them. And because everybody wanted to feed them with crickets. But yes, maybe they can accept if you are lucky crickets, but they will die after sometimes because they are not the good prey for them. And so when I had babies of this species, it was very difficult for me to find a good, future keeper for them, because when people ask me, "Oh, can I feed them with crickets?" I said no, just no, it, and it's a very very rare species, and it's even more rare to have captive bred babies for sale. But I was 1 year. I didn't find anybody, and all people seemed to be not serious at all. So after 2 months of having babies, I just give them to my coluber, and he eating all of my babies, because I prefer them to be like food for my snakes than to be in bad hands and die slowly, and it will be very hurtful for them, because as you can imagine, to be fed with not the good prey for months and months and dying slowly, it's just terrible in my eyes. So right now, for this species, I stopped to breed this species because I didn't. It's just so difficult to find serious people for having this species, and it's just so sad because it's a very rare species, even more in captive bred, but I didn't find anybody very serious. So now I just stopped to breed them. It's just ridiculous.
Well, that's
Yeah,
that's one of those decisions that can be hard to make, but it makes
yeah,
sense. Like you don't want to have this guilt of continuously producing babies that are going to go to poor homes. And
yeah,
just remind me, that's a species that eats mostly centipedes and millipedes.
yeah. And also, this species, uh, it's also, I told you at the beginning, it's an expensive species to feed. Yes, maybe it's not expensive if you live in South America and you can find them more easily, but if you live in Europe, it's just a nightmare for your finance. And so I can't keep more than a group of 4 because yeah, it's just so fucking expensive at the moment. So
Like what sort of place are you buying those prey items from? Are those inverts being sold to be pets for people, or are you importing
Yeah.
that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I'm buying some to be pets. It's captive bred, but I bought only the one who have missing legs and stuff like that.
Gotcha. The ones that can't be sold as pets.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be yeah. You definitely don't want to be paying pet prices for feeders. That
Yeah.
the math doesn't. I mean, it's kind of like when you go buy
And
feeder rats.
when I say to people, oh yes, you like this species, okay, cool, but do you know the price for feeding them? And each time people are just like, oh my god, it's so expensive, it's not possible. Yeah, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and as far I know I had asked this at the beginning, but I had talked about potentially doing a breeding project for the feeders themselves, but that's you just don't want to do that, right? You don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want at all, and also it's not very worth it because those species, yeah, those species of Scolopendra don't breed enough for me, so I will need to buy some anyway. So I prefer to not stock any of them at home. Yeah, and also I'm I'm a little bit, it's not afraid the word, but yeah, even after years, I'm not used to this Scolopendra.
Yeah, they are a little creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely 100 euros a month is a big food bill for a tiny little
And
snake.
and also, I had a lot of cost of veterinary with the species because they fight against scolopendras. So you can imagine sometimes it's very bloody. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So how large of a prey item would you offer? Give me an example of the difference between the snake and the actual invert
The
itself.
snake, the snake making like 50 centimeters, sometimes 60.
Okay.
And I give a prey of 10 centimeter.
Okay. So yeah, it's a bit of a battle to get it down.
Yeah. And for some of them it's very easy, but one of my male it's just it's just very good for hunting, I think. Yeah.
Wow. So
And it's an interesting thing about the insectivorous snakes. I never seen, and by never I mean never, one of these insectivorous snakes. All of my species who eat dead prey. They only eat lively prey.
okay, interesting.
Yeah,
So that hunting response is a
yeah.
major
The
part of their.
hunting it's very necessary for them.
Mm.
So because it's also a point because you think, oh, maybe I can have a lot of scolopendra in my fridge or snails and everything. It's not possible. They need to hunt.
Yeah, it's interesting, and especially, I mean, the difference between a live snail and a dead snail doesn't seem very significant considering how slow they move to begin with. But I guess the snake knows, right? It's not.
Yeah, and also the snakes will just eat the snails if he is out of the shell, in
Right.
the and take a walk. If the snails is inside the shell, the snakes will not hunt it.
Right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
That is very fascinating, and like I said, it's a fascinating sector of herpetoculture that literally has almost no coverage. It seems like so that's why your Instagram page was. I forget who sent it to me. The person listening, the person who sent it to me is probably listening right now. So thank you for sending me Charlotte's information because it is kind of a fascinating sector of the society or of our hobby. Like I said, as far as your content that you're producing, you have an Instagram page that you share some information. It sounds like you're writing a book. What can you give us some timelines on that and what type of content you're planning on posting on Instagram?
I'm in Instagram since I think I don't know, not so much times. I think 2 or 3 years. I don't know. Before that, I didn't want to be on social media because I was on Facebook 10 years ago when I started, but I didn't like all this rush after the rare species about, so I had the feeling that people sometimes take species to be. I don't know if they like the species or not, but it's just to have oh look, I have a rare snake, blah blah blah, and until a moment, and I have the feeling some people are not passionate. Really, they're just running after likes or stuff like that. So I just wanted to make my stuff in my room, just to be with my animals, and that's all. So I really wanted to make things for myself first. It's egoistic things, but and also I had a bad story about social media. Um, when I posted back in the day on Facebook, I was not really, I was not active at all, but sometimes I posted some pics. And one day I had, because we are not allowed to have this type of species, as you can imagine. So if people have questions, they just send in me some PM, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm happy to answer to people. But it was until a moment of, about this story about the Skolekofis, the rush in 2016. A lot of people contact me like, "Oh, my snake is dying. What can I do?" Uh, oh, or they bought the species and they didn't know and didn't search before how to feed them properly. They buy the snakes and check after. And I had a very bad feeling inside of me, like maybe it's because it's a little bit my fault, because one day someone says, I think you have this species, so I wanted to have this one, so I bought it. And it was, in my head, it was so terrible, like because of me, some snakes died. So I just wanted to, I just delete my account and stop everything. And I was close to stop even the hobby at this moment, because it was so hurtful for me to feel responsible of something like that. So I'm in on Instagram since 2 years or something like that, and I really hesitated to go back on social media. And it's my friend who said to me, "Oh, just come on, you can go just to share some few pics. You don't need to speak to people, blah 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 blah." And so now I'm back, but I'm just making few content like before. But on Instagram, it's really less. You have less text than on Facebook. It's something different. It's just more art stuff on Instagram. I have the feeling, so it's okay to share pics, and I didn't see the same bad things that I had in the past. So for the moment, it's okay. But if I see, bad things like that, I will. I think I'm not. I'm not sure to if I can, support that. Because I really love my animals and those species. I'm just super passionate into them, and doing really my best to making the things correctly. And to hear that snakes died because maybe people will want to have my species, it's just so terrible.
Well, at least your heart and your mind are obviously in the right spot. That's you can easily tell. You're not looking for social media fame or likes or whatever. You're wanting to share your passion without simultaneously sparking a mad rush for people wanting animals that they don't actually want, but they think they want because they want to have a rare species or an interesting species. And I think that's admirable that you did that.
And I am very happy to answer the question of people, and because I really love when people are interested in those species, but I like when people making the things in the good order, just checking the info before. For me, it's the principal things to do, and mostly with sensitive snakes like that. Yeah. And also I was not on all the social media for a long time because on social media I never show my face. And when I came to these reptile shows that you can do for giving some snakes, some hatchling, blah blah blah, Yes, I had bad experience with people saying, "Oh, I searching Insectivorous snakes. Do you know this guy?" Because I was on the meeting point with the people, and I said, "Yeah, it's me." "Oh, no, no, but no, I don't want to speak to his girlfriend. I want to speak to this guy." I said, "No, but it's me." and one day I just didn't want to give any snacks to a guy who didn't trust me after 10 minutes that I was the person that he wanted to see, because it was not possible for him to think that I can make the job that I'm making with them. So after that I was kind of, well, yes, disappointed. I was, oh, I would just want to do my stuff and just leave me alone, and that's all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's obviously if the account is anonymous and there's no name, it's an honest mistake. But you think once somebody says, "No, this is me," you just believe them, because why
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
yeah, and yeah, because sometimes you have strange people in this hobby, but it's just everywhere. It's the same, I working in video game industry, and it's just the same, and everywhere it's just the same. But yeah, it's just, for me, it's a hobby, so I want to the things stay like that, just for enjoying myself. If I see bad sides, uh, just not for me. I just want to make the thing simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely hear you with that. I'm very similar. My social media presence is quite minimal. It's just share the episode that gets posted and then go back into the weeds almost, just because I don't have as much energy as maybe I did when I was younger to get into battles with people and things like that. It's just the
Yeah,
way it is. Can you talk a little bit about the book or the writing that you're planning on doing? Because I think that's a really interesting thing as well.
yeah. It's a book. So as I can say before, I'm working in the video game industry. I'm a graphic designer. So as a graphic designer, I like beautiful books. And so I wanted this book to be like a graphic book, if I can say that, arty, kind of
Mm.
arty.
Yeah,
So it just a book with a lot of pics and art stuff about all the species. One chapter, it's one species or one genus, and I trying to speak about all the species that I have. So, for example, for the parias, I'm making it's for the chapter parias. I don't know, 20 pages. So I trying to have between 10 and 20 pages for each species or each genus, that depend.
sure.
Because for some of them, I have a lot of species of the same genus, so I put in the same chapter. And yes, I would like to have a book of, yeah, more than 100 pages. Yeah.
And how far along that process are you?
Uh, at the moment, I'm close to finish it. I started like 1 or 2 years ago. I don't remember. But I need, more pics to finish it. And also, I would like to have my species missing, under license. And like
Mm-hmm.
that, I can finish my book. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure many people listening to this right now are wishing that they could have their hands on it immediately. So I want to make sure, maybe I'm not sure if next year is on your goal for having it completed, but do you have any, once it does get completed, do you have an idea of how you're going to, is it going to be an ebook, or are you actually going to try to get it printed, or?
I would like to print it because I like beautiful object. If I can say that, like as a graphic designer, I want to have the object in my hands, and yeah, because and also it's kind of crazy arty stuff, in my mind. By that I mean I will use only the best way to print them, in my opinion. So a very good paper. It's just crazy crazy things. Maybe, and the problem is maybe it will be a not cheap one, because I will not make any money if I sell it to people, because I don't want to make money on it. But I don't want to lose money, and I'm pretty sure the book will be not cheap, because I want only the best, material and everything, because I'm very picky on all this stuff. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think you shouldn't price it to a point where you don't make money, because I think anybody who buys it should be willing to contribute to your time and effort of doing it. And I think reptile people in general are used to buying expensive books. I mean, $100 for a book is nothing for most reptile people, because most books are very thorough and lots of pictures and good paper and whatnot. So I wouldn't be too afraid of that.
Yeah. I, at the beginning, I wanted only to do it for myself. But after sometimes, because my friend said, no, but just so stupid to spend so much time on just for keeping for yourself. And also, I think it's true. I don't want to be egoist and people making maybe the same mistake as me. So if I would like, if I started now to have a book like that to help me. So I think, I will sell it to people. But yes, it's I still don't know how I will do it for the moment. Maybe I will make also an ebook. Maybe it will be more simple for some person. But I'm really into the beautiful object of has to be a book, and for me it's just so a shame to have an ebook, because I love books in general, and I think you lose something if it's an ebook. Yeah.
Many reptile keepers are in the same boat. Like, you can see the books beside me here. I guess the people watching on YouTube can't, but you can, because you're watching through a different camera. And that's just people like that. They have, so definitely you'll keep me posted, and we'll stay in touch about that, because I'm sure there'll be people that will want to support you with that endeavor when you do get it done. No rush when it does happen. Did you write it in English or French? I'm sure French.
No, it's in English.
Oh, it's in English. Okay, so that's even better for most people.
Yeah. That's why I make it in English, because if I want to, after some reflection, to give it to a lot of the people who will be interested, I just can't do it in French, because I think in France we are just 2 or 3 people interested in Insectivorous snakes, so it's just so stupid.
Yeah, so, you want to have a little broader market than just France.
Yeah. I don't run after the market, but maybe I want to think to the others, because it's just so egoistic to do it in French.
I'm sure people who don't speak French would have bought it anyway, because, like I said, people like to own those types of things. It's just sort of a decoration, and especially if there's beautiful pictures, they can look through it. And those who are, you hear it all the time, people are like trying to get into a species, and they find like a German paper, and they sit down, they translate it just so they can get like a couple tidbits of information. But if it's in English, then I'm sure you'll definitely get people buying it. So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that you'll keep me posted. You'll let me know when we'll make sure that we talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, of course, I will keep you informed. And also, maybe the only thing that I like with ebook, if people can translate it more easily, and it's less egoistic maybe, and also cheaper for people who don't have the budget to buy an expensive book, because if I only put beautiful, I don't want to say luxury materials, but you know what I mean, because printing and everything, it's very expensive. If you want to put money on the table to have a beautiful object at the end, it's just super expensive. For example, I'm making also a book about planes, because I don't want to especially to speak about planes, but for example, it's like, if I want to make a single book, because if you're making many books, it's really cheaper, but if I want to make only one, it's like 200 euros or 300. Yeah, but it will not be the case for the snakes book, because I think I will just print to have some stock, and like that it will be less expensive. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably even publishers and whatnot that might help with that. So maybe if you can always reach out to me, because I have connections all over the place that might be able to help you with that side of it too. We don't have to talk about that right now, but
Thanks.
That's one of those world parts where you're like, I don't know how to navigate this, and I don't personally know, but I probably know people who could help you out.
I will send you some pages of my book if you want to see.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. That would be awesome. And we can definitely stay connected on that, and maybe I could help you out. Charlotte, is there anything else that we didn't cover today about insectivorous snakes that you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
I don't know. I think it's you covered most with everything with your question. But I think, yeah, we cover most of the subject, yes. And yes, if you have any question and if people have question, I will be happy to answer to everybody. Yeah.
Can you let them know the Instagram page so they can go find it, just the handle?
Yeah, it's my Instagram page. It's Insectivorous next, but yeah, I will send you, you have my name, by the way, but yeah, it's Insectivorous next, yes.
So it fits in with the theme of our conversation today, and I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. And anyway, Charlotte, this was fantastic. We have not talked about anything like this on the podcast yet, where I think this will be episode 182 or something. So out of all those hours of conversations, this is something that's completely brand new to the show. So thank you so much for bringing it to us, and thanks for being a guest, and thanks for doing all the work that you're doing. And I cannot wait to see you continuing to work and hopefully develop that book in the next year or so. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks again for the invitation. And yeah, it's my first podcast, because it's not I'm shy, but I'm like more wild kite. I just love making stuff on my side. So it's taking for me a long time before to accept, because yeah, I was not sure, because yes, I'm not used to podcast also. And yeah, I hope it will be a pleasant. Thanks again, because yeah, it was very, very pleasant for me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that is the end of that episode. Charlotte, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I know you were mentioning at the end of the episode that this is sort of a little bit out of your comfort zone, and I think I can speak for the listeners as well as myself and say that we're so happy that you decided to get outside your comfort zone and come on the podcast, because really this is a lot of incredibly valuable information that isn't out there. There's not a lot about this niche, this group of insectivorous species, invert-eating species, and it's just been fascinating to hear about that. So, and I think also we're all very excited for that book. So, not to put any pressure on you, but I'm sure that there are many people who listen to this who will want to get their hands on that. So again, we cannot wait to see that develop. Listeners, thank you so much for watching the episode or listening to the episode. Make sure you go give Charlotte a follow on Instagram. All the links and everything is in the show notes and the description. If you would like to support the podcast, you can do that at patreon.com/animals@home. You can also support it by checking out the sponsor, Custom Reptile Habitats. Make sure you use the link in the YouTube description or in the show notes, because that is an affiliate link, which means a commission comes back to me at no extra cost to you if you do happen to make a purchase, which is a way that you can help support the show. And if you are looking for any more information on the podcast, make sure you head to animalsathomenetwork.com. I will catch you guys in the next episode.